When you check out at the pharmacy, you see the journey from idea to medicine, thanks to our intellectual property system, or IP for short. IP safeguards inventions, like a new way to prevent seizures or lower cholesterol. And IP supports competition from other brands, then lower-cost generics, which are 90% of prescriptions filled in the U.S. Innovation, competition, lower costs, thanks to IP. Learn more at phrma.org/IP Works Wonders.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to
Mario's Bistro. The special tonight is the beef carpaccio.
With the Venmo debit card, you can turn the basketball game tickets your friends paid you back for into a romantic dinner that you can earn up to 5% cash back on. Use your Venmo balance to pay for the things you love to do. Visit venmo.me/debit to learn more. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Terms apply. Dosh cashback terms apply.
On this show, you hear me talk a lot about money in politics. But if we're being honest, there's money in politics, and then there's money in Wisconsin politics. Just ask John Nichols. John, tell me, how much money is being spent on Wisconsin's Supreme Court race right now?
It looks like it will end up being around $100 million. Now, it could be a little above, a little below, but around $100 million.
I don't want to be naive, but that seems like a lot to me.
That's the most ever in the history of a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin and in the history of a state Supreme Court race in the United States, by far.
John's a reporter, knows Wisconsin inside and out. He says elections here have been expensive for a while now. After all, this is a real swing state. But this state Supreme Court race, which ends tomorrow, is something else, especially because of where much of the money is coming from, or from whom. Elon Musk.
What we have seen is that every time we check, the amount of money that he's put into the Wisconsin race has gone up. It is, as of today, around $19.3 million. But I haven't checked in the last hour, so it could be more. You know, we've never seen anything like this. Remember, in addition to massive spending, we're seeing massive spending by an individual. So just as Wisconsin has already superseded the most expensive court race in the history of a state, right? We're already there and heading toward possibly $100 million in spending. We also, with Elon Musk, have the most spending by an individual in such a race in history.
Wisconsin Supreme Court races are technically nonpartisan, but Elon is boosting the candidate who says he's going to be part of a support system for Donald Trump. Musk is running ads, paying for door knockers, and also inserting himself in less conventional ways. His representatives have offered voters $100 to sign a petition saying they are opposed to quote-unquote activist judges. They even say they've offered one of the signatories $1 million.
You encourage people to give you their name, right? And then they effectively are entered into a lottery. And if you are the winner, you get $1 million check from Elon Musk.
How is that legal?
That's a very good question. There are lawyers in Wisconsin for election lawyers, some of whom say it is legal, some of whom say it's not.
Because I guess you're not promising to vote.
No, that's the
someone.
Key. That's the key. You're signing a petition say you don't like activist judges. So it's one of those that skirts the boundaries. And, you know, truthfully, when they established campaign finance and ethics laws in Wisconsin, some of which go back to, you know, decades, even, you know, very, very long time. And I don't think anybody anticipated the richest man in the world giving away $100 to sign a petition and offering the chance to win $1 million. It just wasn't something associated with Wisconsin judicial races in the past.
Or like any races.
No, it's very strange. And it's, look, it all feeds into a narrative that suggests that Elon Musk really wants to buy this election, right? And kind of wants to, intervene in any way he possibly can with his great wealth.
Do you think he'll be able to do it?
Well, let me say this, which I think is important. It's not like Elon Musk is sneaking in with this money. This is a big story in Wisconsin.
That could be good or bad.
Right, that's what I mean. It could cut against it.
And I guess we'll see how that works out for him.
Yeah.
Today on the show, why does it seem like Elon Musk is trying to buy a Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. The cold weather is sticking around, but Home Chef is delivering hearty recipes and comfort foods to help you stay cozy and warm. You know what's great about Home Chef is that all their meals come ready to cook even if you are a novice. So what I used Home Chef for recently was making sure my teenage kid, our household carnivore, had food he loves, even when the rest of us are sitting around with a bowl of rice and beans. He was able to take a break from homework and get something hot on the table for himself in just a half an hour, because Home Chef recipes are just that easy. Home Chef delivers fresh ingredients and chef-designed recipes right to your doorstep. Users of leading meal kits have rated Home Chef #1 in quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering What Next listeners 18 free meals, plus free dessert for life. And of course, free shipping on your first box. Go to homechef.com/whatnext. That is homechef.com/whatnext for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. Homechef.com/whatnext. Must be an active subscriber to receive that free dessert.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Can you set the table for me? I think Wisconsin, we know it's a swing state. It's got a Democratic governor, but it went for Trump in November, right? So just give me here's where we are right now in this state going into this Supreme Court election.
Yeah. Wisconsin is a battleground state, but it's not a normal battleground state in the context of the U.S.
Why do you say that?
Well, because it has been a battleground state for a really long time, and we just can't break the habit. And so as a result of our last 7 presidential races in Wisconsin, 5 of them have been decided by roughly 30,000 votes or less.
So what you're saying is Republicans and Democrats are both trying to win this state, and for 2 decades, no one's come out the clear victor?
That's right. And so we have, think about it. Wisconsin is a state that sends Tammy Baldwin, one of the most progressive Democrats in the Senate, to Washington. And we also send Ron Johnson, one of the most wildly right-wing Republicans. And we keep doing it, it doesn't, the pattern doesn't break. Democrats have been on something of a winning streak in Wisconsin, winning the governorship, winning attorney general, reelected.
Locally, not, still went for Trump.
Yeah, went for Trump, but went for Biden in 2020. Presidential, very close. But Democrats have had a pretty good last few years. And one of the places that they've had some of their greatest success, intriguingly enough, has been in nonpartisan races.
Like the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is technically not Democrat, Republican.
There's not a ballot line there. And so in these nonpartisan races, historically, they were, very boring. and very, kind of off radar. And the two people running for Wisconsin Supreme Court were usually a couple of white guys with thick glasses,
Standard issue Supreme Court man.
Absolutely. Look at, like really thick and kind of serious figures who, their ideology was very hard to discern until they got on the court. And even then they were pretty mainstream.
But in 2011, something shifted at the Wisconsin Supreme Court. A Republican governor, Scott Walker, pressed on the court to become a place he could consolidate his power. They ruled in his favor again and again. That ignited a pushback from progressives who started campaigning for Supreme Court seats hard.
So what's happened is that the court, which was historically kind of conservative, in fact, at one time had a pretty substantial conservative majority, progressives elected a woman on this nonpartisan line in 2018, in 2020, and in 2023. What that did was it flipped control of the court so that the court, which had been conservative for a long time, became progressive.
And that was important because the court had gotten involved in a lot of decisions with real impact, especially around stuff like voting districts, gerrymandering. And now we see, for instance, the court is considering an abortion law. So the court has really been front and center with a lot of the biggest political issues of the day.
And can I explain to you why that is?
Yeah.
Not hard. Go back to that thing of we're the ultimate battleground state. We're so closely divided, right? So as a result, we often have a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature.
That means they need a referee.
Absolutely. And
enter the Supreme Court.
Exactly. And boy, have they done a lot of refereeing. The 2020 presidential race in Wisconsin, Donald Trump was challenging his narrow defeat. The Supreme Court, by a 4-3 margin, rejected Trump. But that means if one vote had gone the other way,
could have looked real different.
Wisconsin would have been Trump's biggest legal success of the 2020 challenges, right?
Wow.
Then they have issues related to abortion rights because Wisconsin has an 1849 law written before the Republican Party was founded, which pretty much bans abortion. And that's still on the books. And so there's a legal struggle as to whether that law is valid today. And finally, of course, the court intervenes on voting rights issues, including gerrymandering. Wisconsin has been seen over the last 12, 15 years as the most gerrymandered state in the country. The court, through taking cases, caused a redraw of districts in the legislative level a year or so ago, which was profoundly influential on the 2024 results. And they could take up the congressional districts, which theoretically could also have a profound impact because these districts were drawn so radically to favor the Republicans that just making them fair, you don't have to, gerrymander on the Democratic side, just simply making them fair and competitive gives an exponential boost to the Democrats. Wisconsin, as we've established, is a 50-50 state, right? It, narrowly goes one way or the other in a lot of elections. And yet we have, of our 8 members of Congress, 6 are Republicans and 2 are Democrats. That doesn't make sense.
Does not seem like an even split.
No. If we reflected just the kind of electoral patterns of the state and you had a good draw, you probably would get what we historically had, which was a situation where, you might have 4, in this case, you'd have 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. And this is a very charged issue in the race because the Republicans are claiming that if Crawford wins, they're going to lose 2 seats.
Okay, so you've convinced me that Wisconsin's Supreme Court is quite important. So tell me who the candidates are this year, who folks are going to vote on April 1st if they haven't voted already.
Well, the progressive candidate is a woman and a judge from Dane County, which is the Madison area.
Susan Crawford is her name?
Crawford is her name, and she is very, very qualified. She's a former chief counsel to the governor, former assistant attorney general, who has never been involved in She's never been on the ballot line as a partisan. She's always been, a nonpartisan judge and a lawyer, but she's got a progressive record. She's represented all sorts of progressive groups, unions, Planned Parenthood, etc.
What about her opponent?
Her opponent is Brad Schimmel. And Brad Schimmel is very much a Republican, although, again, nonpartisan ballot. Brad Schimmel is the former district attorney of Waukesha County, which is historically one of our most Republican counties. He was on the ballot there a number of times to be DA. And then when Scott Walker was governor, he ran for state attorney general and was elected as a Republican. And so he's somebody who was very much identified as a partisan.
Well, and a politician. It sounds like he's operating as a politician.
Yeah. And in fact, he got beat for re-election in 2018 and he needed a job. And so after Scott Walker and Brad Schimmel got beaten in 2018, there's a couple months between election day and when you swear in the new governor. And so Scott Walker had the opportunity to make some last minute appointments. And he appointed Brad Schimmel as a judge over in Waukesha County. So now Brad Schimmel, this guy who is very, very involved in politics as a partisan and as a statewide Republican candidate, is running for Supreme Court as Judge Brad Schimmel. And so the dynamic here is that you have two distinctly different candidates. One who really is in the long term identified as a progressive lawyer, right, and judge. The other in the long term identified as a very conservative Republican politician, now a judge. And they're banging away at each other.
Sounds like they're both accusing each other of being too soft on crime, even though this role is not a criminal judge role.
Nope. This court, it's the highest, in a sense, the highest appellate court, right? And so you're taking cases that are generally dealing with business or with sorting out legal differences, open records. But because people associate the word court with crime, right, dealing with crime, the ads are all about, oh my gosh, I guess the best way to say it is the essential message of each campaign is that the other candidate let the worst person in the world off.
Sounds terrifying. Like in one of the ads I watched, it was like Susan Crawford let a child molester back on the streets, walking distance of a school. Like, rough.
A 7-year-old girl attends a birthday party at a local swimming pool. She's sexually assaulted by a repeat child molester. The monster faces 100 years in prison, but Judge Susan Crawford let him off with just 4. That was Crawford's choice.
And then Brad is accusing Brad Schimmel of, like having some cozy relationship that somehow let somebody bad off. And, and it's always about, it's generally about child molesters and people who do other awful things.
Their safety is his responsibility. But Attorney General Brad Schimmel repeatedly cut plea deals for men who sexually assaulted children. He blamed underage victims of sexual assault for
this is no longer a friendly judicial race between two candidates, one of whom might win, the other candidate might, say, too bad I lost, I'll run again next time. This has become a race where each side sees it as not just definitional for the court, but really in many ways definitional for politics in Wisconsin and perhaps nationally, because if on April 1, a progressive defeats Elon Musk's money, that is a very powerful message coming out of Wisconsin. If, on the other hand, a conservative wins, that is a very powerful message coming out of Wisconsin.
When we come back, how this race in Wisconsin became a referendum on Elon Musk. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found, and that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found, and that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration.
Missions to Mars, driverless cars, AI chatbots. Feels like we're already living in the future. Well, Robinhood is built for the future of trading. Robinhood's intuitive design makes trading seamless. On Robinhood, traders have access to popular stocks and ETFs 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, so you can keep up with today's fast-paced markets. Spot opportunities and take control of your trades with tools like screeners, simulated returns, and strategy builder. You can now even trade your favorite assets all in one place. Robinhood offers competitive pricing with commission-free trades on stock and ETF options and some of the lowest margin rates among leading brokerages. The future of trading is fast, powerful, and precise. Experience it now on Robinhood. Sign up today. Investing is risky. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Trading during extended hours involves additional risks. Other fees may apply.
Elon Musk first began sniffing around this Wisconsin Supreme Court race back in January. At the time, he tweeted, "Very important to vote Republican for the Wisconsin Supreme Court." He was referring to Brad Schimmel, who, of course, is not a Republican nominee, but I digress. This is all before any money started rolling in. John says he took notice all the same.
This is the reality. When the richest person in the world takes an interest in anything, that's notable, right? And the fact that they're taking an interest in this Supreme Court race, which we already knew was going to be an intense race, because it is going to decide control of the court. Again, if Crawford wins, it remains a progressive court. If Schimmel wins, it becomes a conservative court, and a very, very conservative court, potentially on some issues. So we already knew it was important. When Musk came in, it was really just a question, what day is the money going to come, right? And in fact,
give me my check.
Republicans even speculated about it. And so Musk did come in February, and he came in with a little bit of money. And the question was this just a check sent off,
Right.
And then,
is this a passing fancy, or are we really going all in?
And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so you went from like a couple million to 6 million to 7 to 12 to 14. You know what I mean? It kept going up. And now this last week, it seems to be rising pretty quickly. We're at 19 million now, so
wow.
Reportedly. And this is where it gets interesting, because I don't know about you, but me, if I've got a lot of money, and I haven't really had this problem too often, but if I've got a lot of money, I kind of get a little bit more loose with how I spend it, right?
Yeah.
There's some question about whether the Musk money is being spent all that well. For instance, they had a digital ad campaign that one of these PACs, right, that's getting a lot of money from Musk, put up, but they had the wrong picture of Susan Crawford. The ad attacked Susan Crawford, but the picture in the ad wasn't Susan Crawford. It was someone else.
Who was it?
It was a law professor from out east named Susan Crawford, who's actually quite a prominent law professor.
So someone Googled?
I think somebody Googled. They may even said, law or something like that. And they got a picture of Susan Crawford and they put it in. It just wasn't the woman from Wisconsin.
So did this ad run on the internet?
Yes, it did. Briefly. And then it was called out and it was kind of embarrassing. But it was fascinating because, I mean, it's just basic due diligence. How hard is it to, do that? And it also tells you something profound about the race, because whoever was doing that wasn't paying attention to the race. Because if they had, they would have known what Susan Crawford of Wisconsin looks like. And there's another example of this. In that initial, it wasn't a tweet. It was actually kind of a, what do we call it? An X now. In Musk's initial statement about Wisconsin, he said, it's really important. Wisconsin race is a big deal. You got to go vote for the Republican.
As we've said, nonpartisan race.
So
my guy.
He just doesn't know about Wisconsin.
Even with these snafus, money in politics usually goes a pretty long way. It wasn't clear how Democrats planned to counter Musk's spending until a debate between Schimmel and Crawford a few weeks back. The progressives seemed to almost stumble upon the perfect attack line.
She was in a debate with Schimmel, and they're sitting at a very small table, which is, I don't know why they do this in debates, but they do.
It's like a Charlie Rose situation, but like a cafe table.
Yeah, they're about a foot apart, right? It's getting pretty intense. And it's sort of a little overwhelming. And at one point, Crawford turned, they're talking about money in politics, and Schimmel, it was a bad debate for him. He tried to land some kind of blow on money that had come to Crawford. And Crawford turns to him and goes, well, when you start to look at what's going on with Elon Schimmel.
I have support from all over the country, and it is because Elon Schimmel is trying to buy this race, and people are very upset about that, and they are
And she might have, I don't know whether she wanted to say Elon Musk in that setting.
Oh, you couldn't tell if it was a mistake.
Yeah, or if it was just intentional and this is really strategic, to mess with the guy. But the end result was that it did kind of take Schimmel aback. So if it was strategy, it was very smart strategy. If it was a mistake, Crawford was smart enough to embrace it. And so effectively, they had this whole debate where they did, in fact, talk about all these crime issues and, all sorts of other stuff, abortion rights, elections, Trump. But it kind of boiled down to Elon Schimmel.
So I guess that's kind of the nut of the whole thing. The question is whether running against Elon Schimmel is what people who are not Republicans do now.
Well, it will become what people who are not Republicans do if, in fact, the Musk money gets beat.
When you talk to voters, what are they telling you about this race? I mean, they have been to this rodeo so many times before with these races that everyone's breathlessly saying are so important and make or break for democracy. So how are they feeling about this?
I think they'd probably like the crime ads to go off TV pretty soon. But no, when I talk to voters, look, closely divided state. Often a lot of the people who show up at things are on one side or the other. But generally, they default to the issues that they actually care about, right?
Which are?
Well, this is the subtlety of it. And I don't know how this is going to play, but it's fascinating because it goes now to the national story and to Trump. I can tell you in going to town meetings and events and things around Wisconsin that what's number one, front and center, unquestionably, is threats to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. And it comes up a lot. It comes up not just in political settings, but just in conversations. People are unsettled by that.
And Elon Musk has said there are a lot of fraudsters taking Social Security, and he doesn't seem shy about talking about trimming these programs.
And they've already talked about getting rid of the phone lines for Social Security to call in, changing the office structures. It sort of changes your perspective on politics, right? Because you're thinking, well, this is a judicial race in Wisconsin. How could Medicaid be a factor in that? Well, by these simple steps, right, of what's going on in Washington, by Musk's deep involvement in the court race, his association with one of the candidates, suddenly the threat to Medicaid, the threat to Social Security could be a factor in how some people make decisions in this court race that isn't about these particular issues. And I wonder if the chaos in Washington is going to have an impact on some of them and cause them to say, I think I'll vote for the person that Elon Musk isn't supporting.
John, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's an honor to be with you.
John Nichols is an associate editor at the Capital Times in Wisconsin. He also writes about electoral politics and public policy for The Nation. On Sunday night, Elon Musk rallied voters in person in Wisconsin.
We're obviously seeing like some crazy stuff in D.C. where any federal judge can stop any action by the president, of the United States. This is insane.
Then, Musk gave two people in the crowd $1 million checks.
The reason for the checks is that it's really just to get attention. It's somewhat inevitably, when I do these things, it causes the legacy media to kind of lose their minds. And then they'll run it on every news channel. And I'm like...
And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, and Ethan Oberman. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.
Online education is convenient, but sometimes it can be lonely. Sometimes the extra help you need can only come from someone else. At American Public University, we make online education personalized, affordable, and memorable. With 24/7 mental health support available in multiple languages, access to career coaches, and lifelong career services, you'll never feel alone on your path to success. American Public University. Digital by nature, human by design.